Hi there. Welcome back to our Time Management for Pastors course. We're really excited to have you along. And I wanted to start off by just saying I'm not a naturally organized person. This is not, we might be tempted to think that these are sort of, attributes that come to a person. Either a person's really orderly and organized and another person is, totally disorganized and just lives frantically. My natural mode before I really got into the business world and was forced to adopt or acquire these skills, it wasn't there to begin with, right? These are learned skills and habits. These are disciplines that help you interact with life in a better way, particularly in pastoral ministry, because pastoral ministry tends to be one of those careers among many where you have a lot of control over your time and schedule. And so without some structure and without looking at, and examining how we spend that precious resource that God has given us, we come to ruin. We come to very difficult. We put ourselves in difficult situations. We put ourselves in situations that might draw into question our integrity, right? People are constantly double booked or overbooked or not able to complete assignments or tasks on time, whatever it is. This is something that is an acquired skill for most everybody. I've known a couple people who are pretty high strung naturally, and they might trend towards being more organized, but even they have to learn good or positive organizational skills. So hopefully just to encourage you, if you think, I just do it free and easy my way, these are still things that you might learn from. And the second thing that we've mentioned in the past is that organization in this context especially is highly individualized. The pressures and expectations of your life, your ministry, your family will differ immensely from those in mine, let's say, or anyone else's. So it's not about everyone following the set order that worked for someone else. It's about using the various organizational tools that are available in order to find the best way to effectively manage your time so that you're not always running around stressed and concerned or double booked or forgetting appointments or whatever it is, so that you can make time and prioritize what is important. I remember a wonderful book that I read years ago. It was given to me by a mentor and a friend. It was called The 7 Laws of Debt-Free Prosperity. It's just a financial book. But one of the poignant things that it made clear was that it is not the people who have financial discipline that think the most about their money. It is the people who don't have any financial discipline, that don't have a budget and are constantly worried about debt and moving money around. They're the ones who are constantly thinking about money because they don't want to think about money all the time. And yet, interestingly, a person who has a budget and is able to keep that budget and stay within that budget is able to say, okay, well, the money situation's figured out. I can set that aside. I'm not going to have that constantly pressing on me. And it's the same with time management. So I hope as you continue on, as we kind of round into these, 4th, 5th, and 6th courses or classes, that you don't lose steam, that you recognize that there's going to be some immense value from sharpening the saw on your personal organizational and time management skills. So with that in mind, we will move on into our little summary slide of kind of what we're doing here. And what we're doing here is going through these topics. You've got firstly the weekly planner, and hopefully you're already effectively using that weekly planner. You're learning to, in a way that works for you, chart out appointments, tasks, things that need to be done, things that need to be done on the regular and otherwise. Hopefully that's been effective. We've looked at weekly assessment and in your week in review, the incredible, critical importance. You just absolutely must be taking stock, taking account, evaluating how things are going. And then priorities, we talked about ultimately establishing your yes. What is it that the Lord has put you here to do? And so that you can learn to say no to all those things that may be wonderful things, but they're not a part of your mission, right? They're not exactly what your mission has. So hopefully that's been a reasonable amount of consideration in this regard, that you've been able to think about these things and realize that the weight of the world is not on your shoulders, that you are not God, but God is God, and He's given you a limited set of things to do, even though it oftentimes won't feel like that, and sometimes you need to establish that with even your congregation, letting them know that you are here for this, this, and that, and not here for that, that, and this, and so on and so forth. So today we're going to talk about investing in your leadership, later delegation, The tyranny of the urgent, people versus tasks, importance of self-time and Christian habit trackers, and finally, focus and trying to figure out what steals your time. So all of this works together, certainly in its way. But we want to start with the concept of investing in your leadership. And you say, is this time management? Well, I'm going to say yes. It's absolutely an important part of your thinking, your discussion on how you manage your time. Because one, we're going to see that it should be a top priority, investing in your leadership. Now, you might be in a very large church that has a great deal of staff, right? People, you have the luxury to pay to make sure they're there. And, they're professionally invested in that, which is a great blessing, I guess, from a resource standpoint. But most of the churches in America are small churches with single or small staff. And so you realize that you're really relying upon lay leadership, on the leadership that you're able to invest in, build up, equip, and empower to do the work of God. And hopefully that's going on at the larger church setting as well. But it is a vital necessity in the context of small church. So do-it-myself ministries limit their scope immensely. If the pastor is doing everything, the pastor's the one who takes care of the building, the pastor's the one who does all the teaching, the pastor's the one who does all the, and so on and so forth, leads the elders board and the deacon board. And if the pastor is doing everything, then the pastor's probably not doing everything well and probably not doing everything that he ought to be doing. And the other thing about that is that it limits the scope in terms of being able to involve people. People want to serve the Lord. They want to serve and invest in a church that they find meaningful, that they find important, right? That they know is drawing them closer to the Lord. So it also limits other people's ability to say, well, I guess if the pastor's doing, I don't have to, or so on and so forth. So I have a dear friend, Brett Nasworth. He's the head of DM2, Disciple Makers Multiplied, a wonderful ministry that helps edify and equip people all over the world. But he has this wonderful illustration that if I were to hold out my arms, like in a circle, as such, then that's, call that my scope, my sphere of influence. However, if I open my arms and allow other people to connect, not to be too hippie here, but, everyone holding hands, then our scope of influence, our sphere of influence is expanded immensely, right? So the idea is that if we're living like this and trying to hold it all together within that context, part of the reason why we're going to have time management problems is that we really can't fit everything in that circle, and it decreases our effectiveness within that circle. So that's why today we're talking about investing in leadership and particularly building up and empowering lay leadership. One of these pictures, this is a picture that has been important from the very dawn of my ministry education. My dad taught this to me. It's from Robert Coleman, or it's kind of reduced from Robert Coleman's Master Plan of Evangelism, which really is an ill-named excellent book. It really shouldn't be called Master Plan of Evangelism. Evangelism is part of it, but it should be really, it's about discipleship. It's about building up how the Lord built up the men that would lead his church when he left. So you have in the middle circle, the people that Jesus spent the most time was the three, Peter, James, and John. Those were his closest associates. They got to go up onto the Mount of Transfiguration. They got to go in with Jairus' daughter and see that. So they got to see things and be a part of discussions that evidently the others were not a part of. He put most of his energy and effort into Peter, James, and John, it appears. And then you go out to the 12, and you see that the 12 got more than the rest of the world. The 12 disciples, of course, received the bulk of his attention, the bulk of his teaching, and particularly though he did teach the masses, as we'll see, he taught those 12 and built them up. And as Coleman so well says, the Lord put all of his eggs in that one single basket, right? There was no plan B for the church. Those 12, now 11 men, after Judas took himself out of the picture, right? Were the plan for building and establishing and setting forth the church on this earth. And it appears there was no plan B for that. And so it's an adequate, or in fact, a great model for our ministry as well. Who's in that 3 circle that you're going to get the most of your time, in that 12 circle, so that they can minister to others? We could look at the feeding of the 5,000. We think Jesus feeds the 5,000, but actually it says that he broke the bread and blessed it and gave it to the disciples, and they fed the 5,000. For Jesus to go from one group to another would have taken hours, but because of the 12, it was the workload was reduced and spread out. So then we go past that and we look at the 72, this larger group of people. that followed Jesus and were edified by his teaching. They were called disciples. They weren't the 12 disciples that became the apostles. They were this larger group of folks that really were identified with and Jesus' teaching and followed him, and certainly had an important part of his ministry, but they didn't get as much of his time and attention. And finally, of the masses, Jesus did not neglect the masses one little bit. He taught openly and he taught freely, at least especially until the time of his official rejection, recorded in Matthew chapter 12. So we have all of this information to work with, and it's not to say that that we're trying to make some kind of confusion here in terms of how much do we model our ministry after Christ, but this is absolutely universally applicable to every ministry. If you think about it, Jesus didn't love the masses or the 72 or Matthias, or I should say, Bartholomew or Simon the Zealot or whatever, less than he loved Peter, James, and John. But Jesus recognized, it appears, that he had a limited amount of time, as we all do in his humanity. He was only going to be there in that active ministry for 3 years. And so rather than just throw everything out to the masses, he chose a smaller group of people to invest in, to equip, and to build up so that they would carry that message and carry that, his mission forward. So hopefully we can learn from this that in your church, it doesn't have to be 3, but you should have an inner circle of people, call it your elder circle, whatever it is, that you are investing in, you're encouraging, you're building up biblically, you're training them for leadership, everything that you learned in seminary, right? You're maybe slowly giving out to them. You're equipping them to teach, to serve, and all those things. And as that, that pastor figure in the context of your church family, you're investing in those people. That means that they get more of you. They get more of your time. Additionally, the 12, right? Again, you could put this as a deacon group or whatever it is. It's just the titles aren't important, but you've got a larger circle of people that you can count on to serve, that they're also learning. They're not getting as much intense time as that inner circle, but they are getting intentional attention to prepare them to serve and build them up towards ministry. And then you got your 72. I'd encourage you to think of that as in context of your church, right? Your whole church family out to the final pew, everyone who shows up, you still are meant to have an influence and encouragement in their lives through your public teaching ministry, through whatever time that you have available, individual pastoral counseling when that time need arises, and so on and so forth. So thinking in terms of this way allows you to think strategically, and it allows you to put your time where it's really going to be maximally effective or beneficial for your church family. This isn't about building great, strong, powerful, or wealthy organizations. This is about maximum effectiveness in ministry. And back to the circle, you can only do so much. You can only influence as many people as you can fit in that circle. But if you can expand that circle to the point where you're investing in faithful men who will also in turn teach others, as well, then you are having a good biblical effect on your ministry. So asking that question, maybe it's just 1 in that inner circle, maybe it's 2, but whatever it is, having them in your inner circle and inviting them to take ownership over the church, the local church, is going to be a huge impact, and it's going to reduce what you're doing in order to fit the bill for what you're meant to be doing, rather than getting stuck with a bunch of tasks that could be handled by someone else, right? And that includes, that may include certain ministries, Bible studies, things that you're doing, as well as handing off biblical counseling in the appropriate situation. Because as we all know, many people who come saying they want counseling really just need a friend or someone to just gently anybody can do it, spur them on towards Christ. And then you free yourself up to give more time to those really high level issues. So thinking forward and outward. 2 Timothy 2:2, as we alluded to, is kind of our theme verse here. And these things you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. So here we're looking for 3 major qualities. This is not unique to me, but you're looking for men who are faithful, available, and teachable. They are to be faithful to the ministry. They can't be flakes, right? They're ready to go. They're willing to be. I'm not saying they'll be perfect, but they'll be willing to invest in the mission of the church and in the glory of the Lord. They're available, right? They're available to be there, and they're available to work, and they're teachable. They're willing to learn. Now, if you don't have one of these three elements, they shouldn't be in your inner circle. This is very important. You get a faithful person who's available, but they're not teachable. They're not humble, and therefore they're not useful. And it's really easy to get someone with 2 out of 3 on these and think, well, I'll trust them. We'll take a risk on them. Don't do it. Don't do it. If someone's not all of these 3 things, if they're available and teachable, it is to say they've got the time, they've got the availability, they're willing, but they're not, and they're teachable, they're really willing to learn, but they're not faithful, you can't count on them, then don't put them in that circle. You can't count until such time as they are, for whatever reason, willing or able to be faithful. So again, you have a faithful and teachable person with no availability, you can't, they're great, but you can't do anything with them, right? Because they're not available, they're not able to invest in others, not able to build relationships because they don't have time or whatever it is. So this is the person you're looking for. And I would say the same thing that I say to people who are looking for a spouse, which is don't settle. Don't settle. You might, certainly you'll be investing in everyone around you, and you might be in a situation, you come to a small church and there's no one in whom you can invest, no one in your 3 circle just right. Don't settle. I mean, certainly have the impact you can have on the people that you can have, according to that. But when it comes to building this circle, you don't want to put someone who does not fit the bill into this circle. It will make more work for you and not less. And then you'll just wind up getting frustrated saying that you've poured more poor resources or more valuable resources rather in a place that isn't going to actually edify or benefit the body. So we're going to ask some big questions here to try to get everything in view. First of all, who has the Lord placed that can be encouraged to take on a bigger ministry in the church? As you're identifying these people, do you have someone in your church that has more potential if you invited them? Now, obviously, we don't force people to take on ministry. It needs to be voluntary, just like everything else within the context of the church is motivated by the person's personal maturity and the Holy Spirit. But when you ask yourself, is there someone in the church that seems as if, from your perception, that they could take on more responsibility within the church? Well, then you need to encourage and invite them to do so. Because whether that's taking care of the coffee table or, running the sound system or the PowerPoint, maybe they don't know how to do that, but they can learn. They can learn how to do that potentially with all of the electronic resources today apart from you, right? Take a small online course on how to run a soundboard or how to run social media ministry or any of these things. The reality is that you have more ability than you think you have. And you don't know because you haven't asked, right? You haven't asked what skills and abilities people have, whether that's administrational, clerical, organizational, electronic, or technological. You have all sorts of resources very likely in your church that you're not fully aware of, even just someone to, fill out address, write letters, cards, postcards, whatever it is. So next. The big question after that is very clearly, how can you equip and empower them to take on that work? One of the things that happens in small church very frequently is we find someone who says, yeah, I can do music, and say, great, take that ministry. Like, just do it. Oh, you can do, I'd like to teach about, great, take that. And what that does is on the other side, right, jumping towards irresponsible delegation, forgets the reality that they need to learn, very likely, need to learn entirely how to behave within the church. What are the church's kind of mission and attitude and direction, and how does that all fit together so that they behave appropriately within the context of Christian service and leadership? We've got dozens of examples of people who have acquired certain skills, let's say in the business world or whatever it is, regular commerce, and they come into the church and they say, well, I know how to do this, and they try to do it, but they're not acting or conducting themselves in a Christ-like way or in a godly way or a biblical way. They're doing things like the world would do them or like it worked in their professional environment. And so how to, help in that situation is not to say, well, I'm sorry, you're just not able to do this. It's to coach them, mentor them, and encourage them so that they can succeed in that task. Now, some of those things might be very, very difficult. Like if you have no ability in website design and you're trying to get someone to design your website, that means that you need to be giving them honest and heartfelt direction about this is the kind of church we are. These are the resources we'd like to see on our website, and so on and so forth. So you're working with them, even though they're the one who has the technical expertise. You're not just kind of like throwing it off on them and then waiting for them to bring forth something for you to approve or deny. You're giving them that part of yourself and your time so that, again, you can increase your effectiveness when you are really comfortable and they're comfortable being let to that ministry. But they don't just feel like they've been thrown to the wolves. It's a really important step in thinking about how we build up our leadership. Is not just, hey, do you think you can do that? Great, try to do that. Do you think you do it? No, we need to provide that continued guidance and support, and especially up front, because this is all about ultimately going to be about glorifying God in their life as well. And if through lack of training or lack of attention, they ruin themselves or have a very negative situation in their faith or with the church, then that's undesirable. So you want to avoid that, right? By giving them the equipment and training and empowerment for them to do that. Maybe another point on this other side is learn when to let go. If you're more of the micromanager, want to do it my way type, then learning when that you've given them enough instruction, you got to let them fly and let them use their creativity or their skills or whatever it is. Our final question is, what can you do to take care for them spiritually and keep them encouraged and healthy in their service? So this is kind of continuing along that same line, but equally important is that once you've set someone to a task, you got to remember, chances are, right, unless it's a special situation, that person's a volunteer. They're giving of this time, and yes, they're giving to the Lord, but that doesn't mean that they do so without the need for some care, some support, some recognition. If it's something that's a weekly task or even a daily task, you need to recognize that can easily become a grind. So asking questions like, how's this going for you? How are you doing? Do you need more help? Are you ready to train someone else in this task so that you can split up the work or make it a little bit of a lighter load, or even just take a week off now and again if that's not available? So I think of this particularly for those who manage church finances on a volunteer basis, making sure that they're not just getting worn down a couple years of collecting and counting up all the collections and offerings, doing all the accounting software, sending out the update emails of how much everyone's given every year, giving statements they're called. All that stuff takes people's time and energy, and if they feel like they're just kind of mulling around in the corner and not getting any appreciation or no one notices what they do, oftentimes they're going to burn out. So also, as church ministries grow, and we pray and hope your church ministry will grow in effectiveness, we'll find that those workloads will increase. And so you, as the pastor, the manager, or the elder board, however you want to look at it, is in responsibility, a position of responsibility as a caretaker of their soul to make sure they don't get burned out, right? So, and every time, right, if you were to take that, that person who's taking care of the media ministry or whatever, every moment that you invest in that person is saving you hours for the things that they're taking care of, right? It's a big deal. And it also helps because oftentimes within the context of church ministries where people serve regularly, there can start to be tension and people could rub up against each other or even begin to secretly resent each other for, whatever they see or perceive or what's happening. And you want to avoid that. How do you avoid that? Building relationships, investing in that relationship. So again, these are little investments that that pay out huge dividends. And when it comes, why is this in time management? Because it just sounds like good advice. It's in time management because that's where your time is going. Your time is going towards doing all these little things, and they aren't little, they're important, but doing all these tasks that could be done as well or probably better by someone else. And the only reason you're not doing it is why? You're the guy who's getting paid, so you feel like you should do everything? False. That's wrong. That's not what the pastor's there for. Pastor's there to teach, edify, equip, and empower people to minister, and that's what they're doing. So by doing that, you're stealing opportunities to serve and glorify God in the lives of those you're leading. Is it because you feel ashamed? You feel like you don't want to ask for help? Well, guess what? You're a pastor. You're weak, right? That's the whole point. God is the one with the power, and he's using the power through his people, right? Through his people, that's what you're meant to be doing. So if you're the do everything pastor who's not building up leadership, then you're not doing your job. If you're doing everything, you're not doing your job. And that's really valuable for us to recognize. So the question that we have to ask you is, who are your 3? Who are your 12? Who are your 72? And how can you invest your available time in them? Who are your 3? Who are your 12? Who are your 72? Now, again, it might not be a literal 3. It might not be a literal 12. And so on. You might not have 72 people in your church. You might have more than that. It doesn't matter. The point is understanding where and how you're putting your energy into the right places so that the 3 can minister to and support the 12 can minister and support the 72 can then be going out to and reaching the masses, right? This is a powerful multiplication rather than pure addition. This is a multiplication of your sphere of effectiveness. And if you miss it, boy, pastoral burnout is just creeping right over your shoulder, I promise. So this brings us into some of the more traditional methods of or discussions of church structure. And so your elders board, biblically speaking, I believe that elders are the primary office in the church. Elders are meant to care for the spiritual needs of the church body to as a group, right, as a group of equals, be designing and directing the church in good biblical Bible teaching and doctrine and making good, wise, godly decisions about what the church is going to be doing, mostly with a view towards the spiritual side. The elder board is doing your spiritual counseling and direction and deciding what the church is going to teach, or if you're going to do a conference or you're going to do a new Bible study. All that business. The elder board is doing that big picture stuff. And then you've got a deacon board. And a deacon board, not every church is large enough to need a deacon board, but a deacon board is meant to fulfill and meet the physical needs of the church, whether that's caring for individual people or looking after individual, financial needs in the church, but they're building relationships and making sure that everyone is taken care of. Physical needs are met, building needs are met, finances are getting taken care of so that the elders don't have to get tangled up in finances and, so on and so forth. So it's really critical that you use the structures that are available to you and don't just leave them as in-name only bodies. Like, we have to have an elder board. We have to have a deacon board. No, you need to have an engaged, biblically mature elder board that's meeting together, that is regularly investing in one another and in strong relationships so that you can continue to encourage one another and share a unified vision, both of what the Bible says and also your gospel mission. So, and then the deacon board is additionally working to keep the physical needs of the body at bay, and they're trusted or in good health and good shape. So utilizing those and putting time into those groups is a great way to invest in your 3 and your 12, if you want to look at them like that, and make sure that you're empowering and encouraging them to minister in the good grace of God and in a big biblical mindset. So that is your module 4. Your assignment for this module is to identify these people. There that goes. Identify these people those people whom the Lord has placed in your life to encourage and equip towards ministry. When do you meet with them, and how do you spend that time together? Right? So again, come up with a list of people in your church. You might list everyone in your church and, star those in your 3 group and check those in your 12 group or whatever, or straight 3, 12, whatever. It doesn't particularly, the apparatus isn't important, but identify it and then be intentional about spending time with those people. So with that, I hope the Lord will richly bless you in your continued desire to be more effective in your ministry to Him by managing the time which He's given all of us. God bless you.